I knew the media narrative around Israel was wrong and that I couldn't truly understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by sitting in an office or on a couch 7,000 miles away. I also knew that looking mostly at the macro and not understanding the micro would be disastrous, so I went hyperlocal to my Arab neighbors on the eastern side of Route 1, aka the Green Line. This is a tragic story about a real estate dispute between two individuals, a widow who may have been paying rent to the wrong owner for more than 70 years, and a terrorist regime using her as an excuse for another war against Israel. This is a story of the economics of change from the eye of the storm at Sheikh Jarrah. On Friday, January 21st, 2022, all hell broke loose again when the Jewish owners of a parcel of land put up a fence around their property. They claimed that the car of a Jewish resident had been lit on fire repeatedly by the Arab neighbors in an effort to prevent more Jews from moving into the neighborhood in eastern Jerusalem. I had seen Sheikh Jarrah in the news and all over social media, and there was clearly a narrative that formed around this story. For example, there were claims of an unjustified Israeli court eviction notice given to Palestinians living in East Jerusalem that had been the pretext for Palestinian unrest and war in Gaza in May 2021. Also, claims of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and systematic injustice, and that the Israeli government was violating the human rights of the rightful owners and taking their property deep within Palestinian East Jerusalem. In May of 2021, these real estate disputes were used by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority to spark a war that left hundreds of human beings dead and collected more than $1 billion in international aid. To put things into context, this street, Route 1, is all that separates eastern and western sides of town. According to the Jerusalem Institute for Policy Research, the population in eastern Jerusalem comprised of about 215,000 Jews and 328,000 Arabs. Most of the Arabs identified as Muslim, but this number also includes some Christians, other religions, and non-religious people as well. If you're a Democrat or Republican in the United States, your group is between 40 to 50% of all registered voters. The Jewish population in eastern Jerusalem in 2016 was approximately 42%. To help understand what was really happening on the ground, we went to one of the disputed properties in Sheikh Jarrah. It was about a 5-minute drive and only a few hundred yards from the main road dividing Jerusalem. I wanted to get both sides of this complex story, and even though there was a flare-up just a few days prior to my visit, after a little warming up, the Arab residents agreed to share their perspective on camera. This Jewish neighborhood fell into Jordanian control from 1948 to 1967, but returned to Israeli control after Israel successfully defended itself from attacks from surrounding Arab countries during the Six-Day War. One of the tenants facing eviction, Fatima Salam, confirmed that there was an ethnic migration after the Arab-Israeli War of 1948.
יצאו מפה, אנשים ערבים באו, גרו כאן, שכר דירה, יש נייר שכר דירה.
From 7,000 miles away, it sounds like Fatima's family is the rightful owner and is being evicted from her property.
השטח שלי.
כן.
כל זה שלי.
כן.
גם הבית הזה.
כן.
74 שנים, 70 שנה ו4.
My parents was here from 63. They came from near the Kotel, Melech David. There was Arab here and there was Jewish here.
But after a brief discussion, it became abundantly clear from her perspective that she has no claims of actual ownership and for decades has been paying rent to an Arab who claims ownership rights to the property, but was unable to convince the courts. Who owned this property before 1948?
دار حجازي دار حجازي.
عبد ربو and Hijazi family. They still the owners, but the government is not agree.
אנחנו גרים פה משנת 48. אני נולדתי פה בבית, אמא שלי נולדה בבית. יש לנו חוזה דייר מוגן. יש לו דייר מוגן, הוא לא יכול לצאת מהבית שלו.
איפה אני אלך? אני בבנים שלי והנכדה שלי והבנות שלי, איפה אני אלך? לזרוק ברחוב?
He want to take his land. He is my enemy. Not even Arab want to take my land. He's my enemy.
We met up with Chaim Silberstein, founder and president of Keep Jerusalem Im Eshkachech, to hear what he thinks the Jewish side of this story is.
This area, Nachalat Shimon, which the Arabs call Sheikh Jarrah, which is actually a next-door neighborhood, they are trying to make it not just a real estate dispute, but a battle for sovereignty over Eastern Jerusalem, the united capital of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. It was purchased 130 years ago. The Jews were violently evicted from this neighborhood at the beginning of the 1948 War of Independence. And after 1967, the Jewish families came to try and reclaim their properties that are being illegally squatted in. And this neighborhood, known as Nachalat Shimon, is all owned by Jews, and Arabs are occupying Jewish-owned properties for over 70 years. This is a great injustice. They, by and large, do not pay rent. They build illegally. They refuse to recognize the Jewish ownership. And it's time that the Jews can now redress this illegal act and bring back the ownership to the Jewish people. And the Arab residents are violently trying to prevent the redress of justice. In this property over there with the satellite dish lives a family, and the Jewish owners submitted files to the courts, and the courts twice ruled that the Arab family living there are non-protected illegal tenants and gave an eviction order against that family.
The home that Fatima and her family are living in was purchased from the Haddad family by Yonatan Yosef. For Yonatan, this purchase was a homecoming of sorts. His grandfather was Harav Ovadia Yosef Zeichet Shalom, former chief rabbi of Israel, was born in 1920 and moved to the neighborhood from Iraq with his parents.
I'm Yonatan Yosef. Before 7 years, I buy this apartment in Kunda Street, and they told me Fatma should give you rent. She is not paying me until this day 1 penny, even 1 shekel, if you not understand what is penny. What I can do to let them to live in my house without to pay? I don't want that the Jewish return to Jerusalem. When I returned to Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood, I made what my grandfather made when he came to Israel from Iraq. Okay, I'm back to Jerusalem, and this is my house.
There are a myriad of Jewish and non-Jewish non-profit organizations that are falling over themselves to help these families. They are spending millions of dollars to try to delegitimize Israel, to try and make Israel seem like the aggressor and the bad guy. Let them take those funds and help the people that really need it. I want to just emphasize that this is not deep in some Arab neighborhood. If you just take a look around, we're about 200 yards from Mea Shearim, from the Mir Yeshiva. We right on the edge of Western East Jerusalem. This was a Jewish neighborhood. And therefore, all that is happening here is the reclaiming of a Jewish neighborhood that existed and was violently seized from its Jewish owners in 1948.
Don't tell me I throw you out from these houses. Why? Like this, you can make war another time. Because it's my house.
It's very important for us Jews and for the rule of law and order in Israel that the law is applied here, and that the illegal squatters will be evicted from the properties, and if they're legal, they will be compensated.
At the end of the day, there is a judicial process, and everyone agrees that the courts decided against the Arabs, who Fatima claims to have been paying rent. Everyone also agrees that ethnic migration occurred when Jordan took control of the land for 19 years. Hamas and Palestinian Authority have used these types of evictions to war against Israel, caused hundreds of deaths, and received billions of dollars in international aid. A genocidal terror organization that continuously seeks to destroy Israel is using this real estate dispute as another excuse for a war, and the international community seems to be buying what they are selling. We all know what happens to societies when the rule of law is not only ignored, but placed under direct attack by a country's enemies. Some have criticized the courts for kicking the can down the road, giving a false sense of hope to those who stand opposed to the law, and thus the courts are indirectly encouraging greater international pressure, more terror, and even future wars against Israel. History has proven time and time again that bowing to fear and terror only kicks the can down the road, and that in a country without laws, nobody wins. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to watch the full episode, it will be available exclusively on tribejournal.org. Just follow this link here.